The appraisal. Everybody's least favorite wild card in a real estate transaction. But did you know that the appraisal is actually a consumer protection device and very, very important for you as a borrower? Let me explain. So you're under contract on a new home. You've gotten through the home inspection. You've signed your initial disclosures. You're maybe even doing some furniture shopping online or perhaps in person. You're very, very excited, but there is this thing looming over the horizon like a black cloud, like a storm, and it is the appraisal. Odds are your agent hasn't said too much about it, other than perhaps shivering a little bit at every mention of it. Maybe your lender has informed you of what its purpose is, but probably not. So from your perspective as a buyer, it's this great unknown that the entire transaction hinges on. Or at least this is the way it was for me purchasing my first few homes. And it's the way it is for a lot of borrowers that I pick up halfway through the deal because no one has explained what the appraisal is, why it's so important to them, and how it's actually a few layers of protection for them as consumers. So let's get into it. What is an appraisal? Well, an appraisal report is a comparison of your new home to similar homes which have sold in the immediate vicinity, usually within a mile, in the last 60 to 90 days. Now, the purpose of this is to properly gauge the market value of your home. Makes sense, right? The reason is that the VA, the appraiser, the lender, wants to ensure that no one is grossly overpaying for that home. Now, how do they compare it to all these other homes that have been sold? Well, it's quite metric driven. If you get into an appraisal report, it's 70 or 80 pages and it's a lot of nerdy information. They break down like the number of beds and baths, the garage spaces, the square footage, the upgrades, right? And they compare these homes in like a very metric driven analysis to determine an equitable value between all of those homes. So is there a little bit of subjectivity in it when it comes to the part of the appraiser? Sure, but the lion's share of it should be based off of metrics that can be easily researched by anyone, including you. So why is the value so important? Well, your lender can only give you what that appraiser says the home is worth. So if you are under contract for $300,000 and the appraiser says it's worth $297,000, well, we got a situation. What happens then? Well, a few things. In a market like it is now, which is July 5th, 2025, a buyer's market in most places, the purchase price can drop from the $300,000 down to the $297,000, okay? In a seller's market, well, the borrower is going to have to come up with that extra $3,000. I used to see it all the time. It's called an appraisal gap. So you'll get the loan for $297,000 and then bring $3,000 in cash as sort of a down payment for the seller. Now, if it's kind of an even Steven market, you might find something where buyers and sellers meet in the middle. The loan will be $297,000. Maybe the borrower brings $1,500. Maybe the seller eats $1,500. However it looks, the lender can only give you what that appraiser says the home is worth. Now, what about on the flip side? What if you're under contract for $300,000 and the appraiser comes back and says, "Whew, I think this puppy's worth $305,000. Well, for one, you've got instant equity, which is great. But sometimes borrowers will want to renegotiate the purchase price up to the appraised value and then get the difference back from the seller in the form of seller concessions to pay their closing costs, to maybe buy down the interest rate a little bit, what have you. I see this quite a bit. So a home appraising high is actually a really good thing for you, okay? Now, as a buyer, you will get a copy of this appraisal report, all right? It belongs to you and you should keep it for the entire duration of which you own that home. And like I said, it's got a lot of really great information. especially if you're a nerd and you kind of get into like metrics and numbers and this and that and the other. If not, the value will be kind of right there on page 3 at the front. You don't really have to get into all that other stuff. Now, value of the home is the primary purpose and most important purpose of that appraisal. But there's a secondary purpose as well. And that appraiser will do a physical inspection of the home. Now, it's much, much different than the physical inspection that your home inspector conducted. Okay, it's more of a superficial inspection, but they are looking for certain high points, certain things that could be wrong that they can call out and have the seller repair prior to you taking occupancy. The entire transaction can be contingent on it. In the world of VA, these are called MPRs, minimum property requirements. And this is how the VA looks at a home and determines whether or not it is in a livable condition. So not only is the appraiser going to assure that you are paying appropriate market value for that home, they're also going to take a walk through and make sure there's nothing outwardly or catastrophically wrong with that home, so you're not going to inherit any problems. So appraisal, again, is something that is talked about a lot, that people are scared of. You know, it's a lot of unknown, the black cloud, the this, that, the other. At the end of the day, it is a very important part of every real estate transaction, but it is a consumer protection device, okay? It's gonna make sure you're not drastically overpaying for that home, and it can also identify problems that can be remedied prior to you taking occupancy. If you have any questions about appraisals, how it's ordered, how the VA handles it, a Tidewater and ROV, please reach out to me. We can schedule a phone consultation and go over any questions that you might have. And if you like my content, please subscribe and check out my other videos.